Hey everyone, Brandflix here, back with another Eternal Return video. Today's video will be talking about Arda, the newest character to join the cast in patch 1.2. He will be an Arcana user, so his builds and routes should be fairly optimized already, courtesy of Adina. I'll go over his skills, his build path, his augments, and tack skill, as well as how I play him. Probably not in that order, just because again, I'm going to ramble and don't have a script. But yeah, let's get right into it. Just to talk about the weapon skill first, if you've played Arcana before, you know how kind of flexible and freeform Arcana weapon skill is. If you haven't played Arcana before, just press it whenever you want, it's not a big deal. You can use the farm, use the poke, use it all in, like it's just an homing missile, so press it whenever you want. Arda's passive has two parts. The first part is going to be an AoE silence field you generate when you collect tree or meteor. Pretty useless, I haven't really seen it be used very often yet, but maybe you'll be good in ranked games to prevent that Nikki from diving on you. So his second part of his passive is going to be a stack-based heal. You get these stacks for hitting your abilities appropriately, and I say appropriately for a very specific reason, which I'll talk about when I talk about his W. Once you hit 5, 4, or 3 stacks, depending on the level, you get a fat heal to yourself and your teammates. So it's very, very good to hit your abilities, which obviously goes for every character, but Arda gets an even bigger reward for it. So hit them well and hit them often. Arda's Q is a very slow moving line AoE. It has a very large cast time and has a very slow movement, but it does a lot of damage and will be your main source of damage as well as your passive stack generation. It will take a little bit getting used to because it is very skinny, but once you're used to it, it's a little bit better to hit. Arda's W is going to be the square that will pulse once and then explode, stunning anyone in it. Very simple, but the reason why it's a little weird is because you have to hit the explosion, which is the stun, to get a passive stack. So even if you hit the middle tick of the W, it won't give you a stack, it'll just like slow them, and then you're like, where'd my heal go? The answer is nowhere. I actually think that's how it works. Maybe I'm wrong, I can never remember. I think that's what my friend told me. So Arda's E is his worst ability by far. He just drops a rock, and the rock not only takes a while to drop, it does a very low amount of damage, and it gives you a very bad quality knockback. And I say bad quality because there's no lingering stun at the end of it. A lot of knockbacks or knock-ups in games will have a stun attached to it to make them feel more impactful. Unfortunately, Arda does not have that, so if you're using it, make sure you're using the directional knockback very well, or else you might be knocking somebody into you when you're trying to run away. Arda's ultimate is going to enhance his next ability to do an additional effect. His RQ drops a delayed explosion. The explosion does a lot of damage, and it also refunds his ultimate by 30%. So if you have a lot of CDR and use RQ, it's a very short cooldown on his ultimate. So if you're looking for basic poke and just want to do more damage, RQ will be your best friend. His RW makes his W last a lot longer, but it comes with this added benefit of having a root around it when you first cast it. The moment you see the walls blowing up is when the root has faded, so just be aware of that. Also, it's just very important to know that you can catch people very easily with RW because the root is pretty hard to predict if you're already on top of the wall as it's spawning. Arda's RE is this, it's kind of like the lock gate if you've ever played WoW. Essentially, you spawn a pillar on yourself and where you target, and then you and allies can take it in one direction once. So if you take it to go forward, you can't go back, but if your ally is on the other side, they can take it back, but they can't go forward. It doesn't enhance the damage at all, it just gives you the mobility, so it's kind of situational, but it's very fun to use because it is a lot of mobility for your entire team. With that said, it should be noted that his ultimate is similar and not similar to Barbara ultimate, in where it gives you the quote-unquote refund for your next basic ability, but unlike Barbara, it doesn't reset all of your abilities. It just gives you the empowered cast, and more unlike Barbara, when you cast that empowered ability, it puts it back on its regular cooldown, meaning that you can't cast abilities like RQQ, RWW, or REE. You have to do QRQ, WRW, or ERE, because when you cast that ultimate ability, even if you had it up originally, it's going to go down and you're going to be sad. So you have to cast the basic ability first before casting the ultimate ability. And also, just a note before I forget, the RW will only give you the passive stack at the very end of the very, very long cast. Just be aware of that. If you're wondering where the healing is, you have to wait a very long time for it to come out. So use your RQ and RE if you want fast healing. Actually, just use RQ. RE is only for mobility. It does so little. So Arda's build, again, has been very figured out due to the existence of Emma, Adina, and Bianca. You're going to be playing a very backline focused mage where you're going to be very pokey with high CDR and pretty squishy as Mage gets these days. I would say just copy whatever meta Adina route is out and contest her. It might be a bit annoying because I think Adina has a better early game, but if you just run an alternate Adina build, probably be fine. His tack skill that I recommend right now would be Blink, just because he has some pretty good mobility in his E, but you do have to summon it and then channel to take it, so he has no form of immediate mobility. Totem would be decent because his ultimate can be refunded much more quickly, but that's probably like a coordinated team issue where you have to have teammates to peel people off of you and, you know, benefit off of that reduced cooldown that you're gonna pop out with. Totem also comes with the drawback that you would have to spend money on it to get the good version, but who knows. And also, I think that Healing Wind might be a bit of a bait because I don't think Healing Factor is going to be that great. Maybe with Healing Wind it'll be okay, actually, because you can get the Healing Wind proc and then you can get your passive afterwards. So you have a lot of options with tack skills. You just have to know what build you're doing. There have been a few ways to play him. Oh, Sentinel also works very well with the support playstyle in case you are into being more of a kitten than a damage dealer, which Arda does both very well. So the way I've been playing Arda is more of that backline mage. I appreciate running in and slamming people with RQ a lot. I use RE to move my team around very easily and sometimes get a cheeky stun. Not really the best idea again because RE, like the E itself, is terrible. And RW is a lot better for catching because it roots people on the outer edge. It's very easy to get caught with that RW, but there are characters with much better catch than Arda. Unfortunately, what they don't have in common with Arda is the fact that he comes with insane healing, so you want to be the last person alive because you provide so much passive healing with your team just for being alive. So play very safe. If melees are hitting you, welcome that because you can blink backwards and get more healing with your Qs because you're in melee, and you can peel yourself with W. Your E will be kind of a mixed bag when it comes to peeling, but just be aware that it is a very good option for that. If you're playing... Oh, augments, I didn't talk about augments. So the augments I've liked the most so far have been Amp Drone and Vampiric Bloodline. Amp Drone just because if you QRQ with Amp Drone, you do a ton of damage and you get a lot of mobility. And also if you hit the buttons fast enough, Amp Drone will also give you a much bigger heal on your passive. Obviously a downside is the fact you're running Amp Drone and that has a 30-second inherent cooldown, so you won't get value off of it all the time. And if you're trying to run around the map with your RE, there's no value because you're just wasting the cooldown. So I'd probably recommend Vampiric Bloodline or Red Sprite or Sentinel if you're into that. Or again, Healing Factor if you're using the Healing Wind build. I think that Vampiric Bloodline is probably going to be a little bit better than Red Sprite because you want more flat amp for your healing. It's a pretty good ratio and your abilities do come out very quickly with your Q. Although I do guess you have to hit your Q very often to keep amp drum up, so maybe it's a bit risky. Again, these are just first thoughts I'm having right here, so feel free to cut this video because I'll just be rambling my ideas. Sentinel is a lot better for overall sustain because you have to just pop it every 6 seconds and it adds a lot of sustain while your heal's on cooldown. So Sentinel also has the benefit of not having a melee versus ranged distinction, so you being in the backline and being ranged won't affect the efficacy of Sentinel at all. And I think for the sub-augments, you're best off with taking Dismantle Goliath and what's the other one? Anima Reaper, because again, stacking flat skill amp is very valuable because you love having that stat. It gives you more healing, more damage. What else is there? Spirit Culling is optional, but I would say just make drinks. If you're not used to making drinks, take Spirit Culling instead of Dismantle Goliath. You're not really the damage dealer of the bunch, but you will notice the damage bump for taking Dismantle Goliath. And then for the secondary augments, I would recommend just taking Thorn Shackles or Penny Pincher. The blue tree is probably okay, but Embolden is hard to control on Arda because you might pop up by accident when you're poking, and then I think Cavalcade is pretty worthless because you should be staying back anyways. Not really too much to talk about this character. I think he will be pretty fun. He is kind of like a Adina DLC where he plays very similarly with his pokey style and his abilities function very similarly, but the entry level is much lower. I will say though that his damage feels very, very low until you have transition items, so don't be too overly aggressive, just let people run into you and get free healing off of that. He is very much so like a receiving character rather than a giving character when it comes to fights because of the nature of his abilities. So just be aware of that if you're struggling with like running people down. He does have a good ability to engage, But if you're playing an engaged character, I think Theodore is just much stronger in that regard. Arda is much better at self-peel and overall fight sustain. Like that being said, his fight sustain is absolutely insane, so have fun with that. All in all, I'll probably play Arda whenever I can if my friend isn't playing him, just because he has been pretty fun. I would just think that you would have to figure out a more interesting way to play him, because right now he plays very similarly to Adina, and I think if you're good at Adina, there's not too big of a point to playing Arda. He feels like a much lower impact version of her, but he does come with a lot of healing. Again, the healing is insane, that's probably the biggest part of him. And so, if you want to play a character that's great at a mid-range and has a lot of passive benefits to his team, Arda is your guy. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry for like the more scatterbrained version of this. Usually for character guides I try and write a script and everything, but I want to get this as fast as possible out, and hopefully the editing will be better than my script. Hope you all have a good night or day wherever you are, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye bye.